Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show that is Ask Rob and Rob. We're back. Happy New Year. It's so good to be back, and it's so good that we've got loads and loads of questions in from you. So let's not mess around. Let's get into it, because Phil, our first listener to call in, has actually got more than one question. So, Rob, before we dive in, let's remind everybody else how they can get involved and get their question answered on the show.
Right, can I remember the number after the break? Let's have a go. 013 808 0035. There we go, I knew it was there. 013 808 0035 is the number, or go to propertyhub.net/ask. Either way, you can leave us a voicemail with a question, or maybe two questions, maybe three questions if you're cheeky like Phil.
Hi, Rob and Rob. My name's Phil from Liverpool. I really love your podcast, and I started listening to it after hearing about it on the Meaningful Money podcast a couple of years ago. Once I'd gotten my finances sorted out, I then started looking into buying property. So I bought my first investment property in August, which is a 2-bed flat in Gattaca in Liverpool. It's tenanted, and it was tenanted like when I bought it. When I was looking to buy, I wouldn't look at a place in an area that I wouldn't live in myself. Obviously, being from Liverpool, I knew all the areas, some better than others. But having gone through the process, I'm now starting to see the power of leverage, and I'm considering buying another property once I've built up a deposit again. My question is, would you advise with investment properties to not be too emotionally attached to them and to not worry whether you yourself as the owner would live in it? And the second part of that is, would you advise to always go for an interest-only mortgage and stay paying interest only for the full duration of the mortgage term, so the full 25 years or whatever the term is? Because by doing that, you're increasing your monthly profit. I have another question, although I just realized it's technically a third question, so hopefully you'll forgive me, but this is for Rob B. Rob, are Liverpool going to win the Premier League this year? Thanks a lot, Rob and Rob.
Thank you, Phil. And being from Liverpool, of course, we're going to answer all of your questions. No bias here on the Property Podcast. So, first of all, should you be emotional when buying a property? The general answer to this, and I'll say general, and I'm going to caveat it at the end, is no. You're making an investment. You are not living in the property. So unless you have some plans to eventually live in the property, then your decision and your process for making that decision should be on the best case investment, not where you prefer to live yourself. And that could lead you to Liverpool, because let's face it, Liverpool is a great place to invest right now, and it's doing very, very well. So it might be easier for you to stick with Liverpool, but it may lead you to other areas such as Manchester or Leeds or further away. You shouldn't rule out those areas. Now, there's a clear advantage to knowing your area. And the fact that you live in an area that is going great guns right now is an extreme advantage. So I would possibly guide you back to Liverpool just because it is a great place to invest right now. Even though you've got one there already, I don't think it'd do you any harm to pick up another one if you're planning on building a wider portfolio. But at some point, some diversification may be useful. Now, the reason I wanted to slightly caveat what I've said there is that while you don't want to be emotional when investments and you almost want to be robotic-like, there is some benefit to considering your emotion, because ultimately, if your property that you're going to invest in is not that nice and emotionally you don't like it, chances are there'll be a lot of other people who feel that way as well. So don't ignore your emotion completely. It can be useful as a box-ticking exercise, but don't make it the main box. Don't make it what leads your investment decision. Just have it one of multiple things that you consider when investing. But it sounds like you made a great start, Phil, and it's brilliant that you want to carry on with that portfolio, even if you're living overseas. So good luck with that. But that's not your only question. So let's get into your second one, which is, Rob, about mortgages, and in particular, whether you should go interest only or not.
Well, as a general rule, my answer to that would be yes. And the reason for that is it's really not a trade-off Because if you go interest only, there is no rule saying that you can't make overpayments. You can either do that up to a certain amount every year during the mortgage term, or you can do it when you come to refinance. So if you decide that you want to pay the capital off, then you can do. But if you go the other way and you do a capital repayment mortgage, then you can't decide to just not pay off some of the capital. So personally, I would always go interest only, and that is what the vast majority of investors do. There are some investors, a small number, who just know that they want to get that debt paid off. Their guiding aim with the whole of what they do is to get debt free as soon as possible and own a portfolio free and clear. That might not be the right objective for many people, but that is what's important to them, and therefore going repayment kind of forces them to make it happen. So if that is you, if that's where you want to be, then fine, do it. But if you are like most investors, then you'd go interest only, because that way you have the higher cash flow and you've also got the option of repaying if you want to. So that's the second question down. He's really saved the hardest for last, Rob, and I really better leave this with you.
It's the hardest possibly because it's not the answer I want to give. Will Liverpool win the league this year? Well, it's early January, and I think the answer, unfortunately, is going to be I hope so, but I don't think so. And that's just because Man City is so far ahead. I won't go into hours of analysis now because this is the Property Podcast, but as you asked, there's my answer.
Okay, well, Phil has dominated this episode, but we've just got time to sneak in another question from someone who didn't leave their name, so let's call them Sam.
Hello, the Robs. Quick question. What's the minimum yield you would consider on a single buy-to-let on both gross yield, i.e. total yearly rent, divided by total house price? And the same question for return on investment, i.e. profit left on rent, divided by cash left in the deal after refinancing. Assuming we are talking about a terraced house up north with medium capital growth prospects. Hope that makes sense. Thanks.
Well, Sam, I'm going to answer your question with a podcast episode. So rather than actually getting into a whole explanation about what numbers you should be looking for and why actually that probably isn't the number you should be looking at anyway, I'm going to direct you to an episode that we recorded back last November. It's episode 452 of the Property Podcast. It's called The Total Return Formula. In that episode, we talk a little bit about yield, but then we also talk about this concept of total return and why that should be part of your investment calculations. And that total return component is why there isn't an easy answer we can give you on gross yield, because if you target a certain number there, you might actually end up doing worse than you should have done in terms of total return. So go and check out that episode 452, and that hopefully will answer your question.
So that's us done for another week. Thank you for listening. We'll be back on Tuesday when this roadshow will continue, and it will continue for the rest of 2022. So we'll see you then. Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.